Okay. Chokma, hello, bonjour. Welcome, everybody, to the second official opening in Ender Gallery. I'm John Hampton. I'm the Executive Director and CEO at the Mackenzie Art Gallery. Very excited to welcome you all here. The Mackenzie, myself, John, and Kat, we're all gathered on Treaty 4 territory, which is the homeland of the Métis Nation and the traditional territory of the Cree, Saulteaux, Dakota, Lakota, and Nakota peoples. Welcome to this virtual Odanak, which is Abenaki territory. And I'm excited to think about land and the way that we occupy it and think about it and transport ourselves in virtually, in our minds, and how we connect, and how the internet and these wires and servers that are based in Bavaria then allow us to connect across Turtle Island and across the world. So I'm not going to spend too much more of your time, but I just want to acknowledge Sarah Friend, Jonathan Carroll, and Kat Blumke for their work in curating this amazing virtual residency. And it seems like I've been kicked off the server, but you can probably still hear me. And I will hand off to Kat Blumke.
Thank you. Thank you so much, John, for those thoughtful opening remarks. I, too, have been kicked off the server, but we will continue some housekeeping, perhaps, while we reconnect. Oh, looks like we're back on.
Yeah, I think everyone got booted off.
Digital art software. My name is Kat Blumke, and along with Jonathan Carroll and Sarah Friend, we're the Ender Gallery co-curators. You may recognize us on the stream as through our purple curatorial avatars. If you are joining us in game, feel free to come up to one of us to ask for any assistance if you do need some. And if you are not yet in game, but you want to join us in the exhibition, please visit ender.gallery/how-to-join to find instructions on logging onto the server. And if you are tuning in through the Mackenzie Art Gallery or Ender Gallery live streams, you are still welcome to participate in this virtual exhibition opening through asking questions and making your comments in the text chat. And for those of you who've tuned into the last couple of Ender streams or any of the Mackenzie Art Gallery streams, you'll be very familiar with this. But if you're not familiar, the text chat is located on the right-hand side of the video if you're watching the stream through a computer, and it's below the video if you're streaming through a mobile or tablet device. And if you're not able to access the chat at all, please make sure you're logged on to the service that you're streaming through, so YouTube or Facebook or Twitch. And yeah, feel free to reach out to us on any of the text chat, as we will be moderating that as well if you're having trouble joining the server. So back to the exhibit now that we're all back in here. When the three of us were reviewing the Minecraft residency proposals in the winter of this year, we were immediately very excited about Simon's proposal to integrate Abenaki medicinal plants into the standard Minecraft environment. As this project has evolved, it's been a really great honor to witness the ways that Simon has been responding to current events and the media coverage of the Canadian residential school system. The exhibition we stand in today features representations of both these interventions in the natural and built environments of Minecraft and the representations of Odanak. And it's a very provoking consideration of this ongoing colonial project as it pertains to the Abenaki people. And the work you see here does address this history, and while it's also creating virtual spaces for healing and education. We are providing a link in the stream chat to further educational resources on the Mackenzie Art Gallery's website about the residential school system and its legacies, and viewers are advised that these subjects will be discussed during today's event. Simon, it's so wonderful to be here with you and your family today on this in this space that you've built. And I'd love to pass the virtual mic on to you now to lead us through a tour of your exhibit.
All right. Well, thanks everyone. Thanks for being here. Just want to make sure everyone can hear me.
Yes.
Yes. Okay, good. Yeah, so this has been a very interesting experience. Oh, right. I should say that I am based in Toronto. So I'm on the Dish with One Spoon Treaty territory, which is the traditional territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat. And it's interesting, as John was mentioning, to just think about land and location and the ability to be in this space that I myself haven't been able to be in, Odanak, that is, for quite a while now. I think last time I was there was 2 summers ago, so before my first child was born. So it's been really interesting to engage with that space that I'm, you know, I haven't been very familiar with even growing up, because I grew outside of Odanak. I grew up in Trois-Rivières, and so I haven't spent a lot of time there in the last 20 years probably. But to revisit it through like things like Google Maps and through photographs that my dad and my sister who work there have been sending me, to trying to recreate these buildings, you know, in the best way, in the closest way possible that I could through Minecraft, and with my, you know, new abilities in Minecraft, because Minecraft was really new to me when I first started in the residency in May. So it's been a learning curve, and it's been a yeah, kind of a strange and interesting process, you know, as someone who enjoys playing video games in my spare time, to actually create something in the Minecraft space and spend what would have otherwise been my gaming time, you know, building this space has been also an interesting process. But yeah, we can maybe I'll just maybe talk about the 4 main buildings that I've built here that you're seeing around you, starting with the health center in front of which we are right now. So you might notice that, like, for example, the health center, which we're looking at, is like a more modern, contemporary architectural building. And that was one of the things that I was interested in building these spaces, was sort of the contrast between these contemporary buildings and the more the older buildings that you're seeing in the back, which are made of brick. And that was also an interesting part of the process, was like choosing the proper materials to kind of reflect that, not just through the shape of the architecture, but also the type of material. So, but yeah, so the health center, essentially, the project kind of started with this because the impetus for the project was my sister Evelyne's work in Odanak. So she's been working there for a few years now, and she in the last little bit started getting interested in, you know, medicinal plants, and along with Donna, who's another local of Odanak, created this guide called Kinwala, and they both are trying to, I mean, my sister could probably speak better to this, but they were, you know, trying to rekindle with the territory through the plants, amongst other things. And I was really inspired by that work and the garden that she had started building. And I felt like, you know, with the pandemic and everything too, not being able to be physically present in Odanak, it was a good way to sort of like reconnect with that space. So my initial idea, all this to say, was to rebuild that garden and like kind of like make the plants have the medicinal properties within the game that they would have had, that they have in the real world. But that sort of fell by the wayside, and I ended up focusing on other things, especially as Kat mentioned, you know, starting at the beginning, or at the beginning of June, end of May, when residential schools and residential school history was very present in the news and in conversations around the country. And so, yeah, so that kind of shifted, but we can get to that in a minute. In the meantime, I can, you can look at the building here. You see the logo at the front was actually designed by my dad, so I adapted the logo that you're seeing here to make it fit in game. Normally there would be writing here on the actual building, but I just kept the logo because I like the design and the style. And if we go around the corner here, you'll see the actual garden, which doesn't look anything like the garden that my sister has made, but I wanted to at least include the plants that were available in the guide. So you'll see they're all identified here, and I sort of made these custom textures, which was also a bit of a learning process to like get them to look okay enough so that they would be recognizable. As you can see, the style looks very different from everything else that you'd be seeing in Minecraft at the moment. So it's a bit higher res, but all the plants are there. And it's been really nice to sort of see these plants also just sort of happen naturally, quote unquote, in the game. So, if you're walking around, you might see, plantain or dandelion or some of the other plants just kind of naturally growing in the game outside of the garden. So, and by the way, just as I'm talking, you're probably seeing me like disappearing and reappearing. I'm not sure what's going on, but I kept getting booted out. So, but I'm just going to keep talking anyways and reappear once in a while. But anyone who's on the chat, feel free to, interject or ask questions if you feel it's necessary.
I really like your yarrow here.
Yeah. Yeah, it came out. That one came out the weirdest of them all. Actually, it's like I think it's the last one I made, but yeah, it doesn't look like it looks a little bit different from real life yarrow. But I used like illustrations that I found online. Yeah, so that's the garden, or at least as it is now. Right now, I changed the design a couple of times, and I might change it again. I don't think so, actually. This is probably the final version. I did want to highlight the plants, so I put them all in a row so they can be, as people are doing right now, just sort of walk through and look at them. And as you'll walk around, you'll probably encounter, I think the ones that I'm seeing the most in the environment is plantain and dandelion, nettle and mullein, not so much. They're actually, I think the mullein is based on the rose bush, the Minecraft rose bush. So I think rose bushes aren't as, they don't necessarily naturally grow as much, or maybe they don't grow naturally at all. So you're probably not going to see those out in the wild as much.
Can you set characteristics for these plants and that makes their frequency, or are they sort of substitutions for
They're substitutions, yeah. So like dandelion is a plant that actually exists in Minecraft. So that one you're going to see pop up everywhere. Plantain I think is based on the cornflower, which is also sort of naturally growing. So you'll see that. The yarrow is oxeye daisy, so also that one pops up quite a bit. The burdock is peony, so I think that one is sort of common, but not as much. And then nettle, I don't think I've encountered at all. It's lilac, but I haven't really seen it. It might be more rare in game, I'm not sure. And then, yeah, mullein is rosebush, and that one I haven't seen at all outside of the garden yet, but I might have to just like plant some here and there just to have it more present.
Evelyne mentioned she's jealous of your burdock.
Yeah, it's like really tall and healthy looking. I think this one's from like a 19th century illustration too, so it's got a very particular, I also brought the vibrancy out of the color, so it looks, it pops quite a bit. Yeah, so we can keep walking around. Maybe I'll take you to I'll just take us counter or clockwise through the buildings here. I'll start with the more modern ones. If you follow me, I'm going towards the Kiona Institution or Kiona College, which is the post-secondary education institution in Odanak, and they welcome people from other nations too. So it's obviously not just for Abenakis and Odanak people, but so kids from all around come, and young adults from all around come to study there. So we can take a look inside. And as you can see with these spaces, essentially none of the inside parts have been visually built, and that's partly because I didn't have access to these spaces, but also ultimately I kind of enjoyed this because the initial idea for the project was to build this garden and to think about the natural space and to think about our relationship to natural space too, like to have sort of nature and human-made buildings kind of less hard lines drawn between the two. I kind of enjoyed that porosity, I guess, between the two spaces. And here and elsewhere, I created these little spaces for gathering, so people can sit down and chat and hang out by. This one's a soul fire. And I got booted off again, but I'll be right back.
We do have Bernie Hi in the chat saying great job on the build.
Thanks. So yeah, if you go to the end of the building here, you'll see that there's a little book, the only book in game right now, or in this installation, that just gives you like very brief information about Kino Institution. And because it is a space of learning, I thought it made sense to have a little library there in the book. But there isn't, as I've discussed with the Ender people, there isn't a whole heck of a lot of didactic material, and that's probably just more going to come from me or from, some very, very small hints within the game, just with IDing buildings and that kind of thing. And that was deliberate in the end because I didn't want to be too explicative either. So I hope that the signs provide enough information that people might have an interest to look a little further if they want to. But I also wanted to preserve kind of a game aspect to this installation without having it be necessarily an education space or a teaching space only. Because I'm also, just to be clear, I'm not an expert on plants. I'm not a Minecraft expert. I'm not an expert on Odanak history. So it's also been a lot of learning for me and a lot of rediscovering things that I knew or thought I knew, or discovering things that I didn't know. So yeah, maybe we can turn off, or whatever. We can turn the lights back on when it gets too dark. Thanks, John. So yeah, maybe we can keep going. And while we're here, actually, because has everyone just been booted off, or?
Not everybody.
Okay,
Yeah,
I just got knocked off.
We are still here. Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks for your patience.
Is it just because there's a lot of us here on right now, or do you know what's going on?
Seems like a good guess.
Okay.
we had more at one point, so might be, yeah, it's since the update. No.
It's the unknown.
Yeah, I mean, it's.
To be honest, not sure. We should be able to handle this many people. So some debugging is going to be required.
Right. Anyways, we can keep going to the next building. Oh yeah, and while I'm here, actually, I did, because I've been like working in this space, and because I have the godlike ability to fly and do whatever I want, as other users can do right now, as you can see. I've been flying around the space and looking at it from a bird's eye view a lot of the time, but because most people who are going to be in the space are grounded and are looking up at buildings and that kind of thing, I did want to add a few vantage points. So I think 3 of the 4 buildings, the health center, CUNA institution, and the next building we're going to, they have ladders that are hidden in the back. So if you go around the building into the back, if you explore a little bit, you'll find ladders behind these buildings, and you can climb up and get a bit of a different vantage point. So you can even figure out a way to go ring the bell up here that's in the bell tower at the top of the this next building we're going to. If you're out exploring, just try and find a way back there and up on the roof. You can go up on the roof. So this is the what used to be the Grey Nuns Convent, and is now the Abenaki Museum. And I believe it was decommissioned as like a convent or as a school. So the Grey Nuns Convent was like basically a day school also. So what would have been the equivalent of a residential school, but locally it owned it, and these types of school were present in other communities, obviously. Yeah, so I think it was in 1959 that the school closed officially, and the nuns, whatever, I don't know where they went elsewhere. So I'm not sure if it was because students were going to other schools locally or what happened there exactly, but it was made into a museum, I think, in the mid-60s, I think 1965. So yeah, so you'll see the front is like, or the front part, or the main part that you're seeing right now, the brick part, is what would have been the convent, the Grey Nuns Convent. And then as we enter and go to the back, you'll see kind of the newer construction, which I think was in the early aughts. So I think 2003 is what my dad told me. So yeah, so if we can go in, and again, this is like kind of a brick space, but also with nature is ever present. So watch out you don't fall in the water, or you can go for a swim if you want to. And I made a hole in the wall here, this sort of passageway that goes from the old building to the new, with a little bridge. So you can go across here. And again, for the museum, I wanted to create this sort of, just wait for people to come in. I wanted to create a little space for gathering. I was thinking about, oral tradition and just sort of the museum as being this place for sharing narratives. And I thought this was a nice little spot for people to do that. And to also represent the museum's role in the community, but also with, the broader public, because obviously it's a museum that's open to everyone. So yeah, so people can come hang out here and have a little chat around the fire. Yeah, there's no sitting function, unfortunately, in Minecraft. Everyone needs to look weird, just sort of leaning over.
It's interesting, Simon, how you have built and considered these spaces for like an audience that it is not in creative mode, is in survival mode, and not able to do sort of the godlike actions like flying across the world, as you mentioned. It was there as you were building. Like, what were these considerations? You mentioned the ladder, but then also warning people not to go for a swim or not to go for a swim. Sort of imagining, how were you imagining your audience viewing this work, and sort of like the types of engagement you foresaw with this area, and how did you kind of plan for some of those?
Well, I think I don't know if we turned off damage for people right now. I think people could still die, so that's part of why I'm saying be careful. But yeah, these considerations actually came really late. I'm gonna say like even as late as like 2 weeks ago, maybe, or a week and a half ago, where I started sort of like getting out of my head of just like, oh, I need to make these buildings and I need to make this space and this has to be exactly like that. And, you know, being really concerned about proportions and all that kind of stuff. Oh, I see John Hampton has found his way onto the roof. Throwing some potions.
Yeah, some of us do have the godlike powers.
But there is a ladder back there, so if you do go back there, you can find your way up.
Yeah, that's what I use.
But yeah, no, it was yeah, I still wanted to keep it as like I said earlier, like a game and as something that people can explore with, you know, the abilities that they have and with the, you know, still in the grounded reality, both of, you know, what an experience of like walking around a real space like Odanak might be like, as much as just, yeah, just being in Minecraft and having the limitations that we have. But yeah, this is part of, you know, like the paths that you see, like if we look outside the building, like, you know, I built paths from one building to the other and like that lead to different places. And I wanted to create those connections and have something that players and users could follow and have sort of more of a, yeah, more of a link between the spaces than just like, here's a building, here's another building. So yeah, just so something that would feel naturally explorable, I guess, if that makes sense, you know, that if you have a path to follow, it makes sense to follow it. So yeah, it's still like very simple. Like, you know, I wasn't exactly doing a very complex stage yeah, stage design, but I was trying to think like a game maker to some degree, at least at the end.
Yeah, some of the work that you had been doing, like in your ongoing video series, where you were looking at Indigenous representation in games, you've been developing a body of work specifically looking at like different types of games and gameplay. Were there any games in particular you drew upon for inspiration, or perhaps just kind of were in the back of your head as you were constructing your own game world?
Well, I mean, I think the my avatar kind of like speaks to that because I'm Link right now from Zelda, and you know, and the fact that Minecraft has this sort of 8-bit aesthetic. You know, I've been playing video games my whole life for like over 30 years at this point. You know, on and off, but obviously my first experience was a very low res, you know, with level design that was very simple. So I tried to think on those terms. But definitely, you know, the Zelda games were an inspiration from like the very first one to probably up to like the first one on Nintendo 64. So I did try to create sort of like also, and even like weirdly recently, I've been like replaying the original Doom. So like that aesthetic has been in my head for some reason, even though this place doesn't reflect that in any way. But I did try to make some like little hidden spaces that people can find if they go around and explore a bit more, which is kind of like you know, something that would happen a lot, especially in earlier games in the 90s, where you would just have to like walk around a bunch to like find actual hidden places. And there were no guides back then. You know, you couldn't just go online and look for where to go or what to do. So you just had to walk around and explore until you figured it out. But I can show you actually. So right now we're in front of the hell pit. And so I was thinking a lot about, you know, obviously with the whole residential school thing, about just the Catholic Church and Christian faith in general. You know, I was raised, I went to church as a kid, you know, up until the age of 14 probably. So that was, you know, religion was something that was present in my life to a certain degree. And I was thinking a lot about that too. So yeah, I wanted to keep not just because of the conversations that have been happening, but because of my own personal, connection to religion growing up. I wanted to speak to that in some way. And when, I first got into this space, this help, it was just there. And I was like, well, it seems apropos to have these spaces that were meant for religious people or for teaching religious dogma to be connected to this pit. So, in my mind, essentially, like, if you decide to leave the quote unquote right path or religious path, then you will in hell. I was thinking about this very sort of like stark dichotomy and polarity in Christian religion and in a lot of religion that's like, you're either with us or you're against us kind of thing. So, essentially the way it is right now, if you leave the path that goes to the convent, well, you're essentially going straight to hell, which is a very sort of brash way of looking at it, but kind of also how religion works, or did at least at some point, and still works for some people. And then the path continues, and it also connects to the church, which is the last building we're going to be looking at before we go a bit further out. And this is one of, I think, 3 churches. Somebody in the chat might be able to correct me on that, but in Odanak. But this is the Anglican Church, which I chose to represent because there was the Grey Nuns Convent, that was the day school, but kids in Odanak were still sent to, some of them were still sent to residential schools, or a residential school, I think in particular in Ontario, which was run by the Anglican Church. So I felt it was important to have that represented in the space. And I just actually learned from my dad just an hour or 2 ago that my great grandmother's house was actually, or is actually still, I think it's still standing, the house, but obviously she's gone, but right across from the Anglican Church. So, if I were ever to continue building this space with like houses and stuff, I might put my great grandmother's house right across the way here. But yeah, so I wanted to. Oh, my dad's saying yes, Simon. I think he means yes. The house is still standing, or my sister is. No, that was my sister. Yeah. So the church, you can see the cross is very prominent. Obviously, as I was reading stories at the end of May and beginning of June, it became pretty evident that I had to make something that spoke to the sort of power and effect of Christian faith on Indigenous communities and the negative effects and the sort of how overpowering it was. And so yeah, that cross is very prominent. That's part of why that cross is very prominent. And I wanted to make a little visual nod to something that I've been seeing a lot of in Toronto, and I'm sure elsewhere in the country, inside the church. And so the ground is orange because orange is like obviously the color that's being used to represent the lives of children that were lost in the residential school system. So yeah, and this is oddly the only space I ever completed the inside of because I had access to images from the inside, but it also felt relevant to have this being like the one space that somehow is completed and adds to that effect of sort of the power that the church had and the effect that it continues to have on people. And this to say that also, I don't want to knock anyone's spirituality, and I know a lot of Indigenous people are Christians and Catholics, and so I didn't want to, I like everyone have seen the images of burning churches and have had mixed feelings about that, but I didn't want to also be disrespectful to some people's spiritual practices, which might include, Christian faith. So I still wanted to keep it as a space where people could collect and recollect if they needed to. And as we follow the path here, so you'll see that the path leads to basically the central focus of the village of Odanak, and is the well. And also I was thinking of this as like a space for baptism. So, you know, again, going with the Christian element. But the path from the well also leads to the health center. So I was thinking of it both as a, you know, a place, you know, water being a source of life, source of healing, and source of redemption in the, you know, symbology of the church. So here's one little hidden element. I don't know if, I think people are okay. They can't drown at this point. So if you go in the well, there's actually a passageway there that leads to the hell pit. So you can actually connect this space of redemption to a space of damnation. And that's just like a little Easter egg. I was just having fun at the end, just like trying to, again, gamify the space.
Yeah, that really resonates perhaps with some of the games you were drawing upon for inspiration, the little hidden Easter egg route.
Just re-logging on here.
I broke the ground, Simon, but I put it back.
Okay, thank you.
I think by the time everyone rejoins, no one will even notice it was gone.
Yeah, it's weird. Sometimes it's just one or two people getting booted off, and then sometimes it's everyone. Anyway. So I think people are back, mostly. They might still be in the passageway, exploring hell. I'll just stand next to the well here, but when people want to reconvene, I'll take you to the last built location. This is fun. This is like doing an actual tour of an exhibition. It's really funny.
Waiting for the stragglers.
Yeah, exactly. Like you're like, okay, I guess I'll pause my spiel here, and not that I have a script, but you know.
And I hope no one's still stuck in hell.
Yeah, I hope not. It looks like everyone's here mostly. Anyway, we'll keep walking, and then we have another little path here. As you'll see, there's signs here that say home. So if you follow this path and those signs, they'll take you to this this object you might be seeing in the distance. This giant green sphere, which was actually one of the first locations that I built, or objects that I built, because I was just, again, like just starting off with Minecraft and trying to have fun. And I was like building circles and trying different shapes out. And, you know, I had like this home location that was just like a very simple house, which I've got rid of in the meantime. But this sphere that I spent hours building block by block was just too big and too, I don't know, it felt wrong to destroy it somehow. So I found a way to integrate it. But yeah, so there's a ladder now. I used to have to fly up to get inside, but if you walk up or climb up, there are stairs up there, and you can get into the center of the sphere. I'll just fly up for the... Might have to do a bit of jumping there to...
Yeah, and maybe for the folks at home who are watching, could you explain like block by block versus like another technique perhaps for creating something so large in Minecraft?
Well, this is something I didn't know, but apparently you can just like, these things you can, you know, use something to like drop a sphere into the space, and I didn't know that. So I built everything block by block because you know, that's the way that I knew how to work. Again, this is a new medium to me. So yeah, I don't know how many blocks are in here. There's hundreds and hundreds. But you have to, yeah, just build it layer by layer, essentially, you know, make all these like little circles that go smaller to bigger and then smaller again to create this big thing. And I tried different sizes, but this one, I don't know, the shape of this one pleased me. So
I think a couple of us,
it's a lot of hours of labor, or it was for me anyways. Sorry?
I think a couple of us, including me, accidentally mined your workstation here.
Oh. Well, I'll have to, I'm trying to remember. I think this was just a frame. I'll just put it back.
We do have a backup.
It's okay. I mean, just for the benefit of people who are here, I'll just... Oh. Oh, I think I just got to put it off again.
Well, maybe while you're waiting to rejoin, this, you were mentioning before to us that this was like a representation of the space that you were actually building, like from home, the whole world in. Yeah, and which is like why this space is so distant from the rest. You know, I was trying to also reflect the physical distance and geographical distance between myself and Odanak currently, and you know, the impossibility to visit because of the pandemic, and just sort of also to also kind of reflect the fact that, you know, the only way that I'm connecting with the space is through virtual means. You know, I have no option right now. I will soon, but I have no option right now to go there physically. So I felt like that distance had to be felt too. And then there's also a bit of a Wizard of Oz aspect to it, you know, like the man behind the curtain. There's this little, instead of a yellow brick road, you have like a mossy cobblestone road, but it all leads back to this thing that's, you know, kind of showing you the artifice behind the whole thing, which is just like me sitting in front of a computer for hours and, you know, trying to make something that is of, in some ways, little consequence. Nope, that's not where that goes. I don't know why I can't put this frame up here. Anyway, we can fix that with a backup later. It's interesting. You had previously, and I think the audience who tuned into your open studio would have seen that you had a small, like residential space, like a house with a bed in another part of the map closer to this location, and you've since removed that. Do you have reasons for removing it but still maintaining this sort of domestic space?
Yeah, I mean, I think I built the house initially just sort of as a home base, and also just for practical reasons, because again, with limited understanding of the game, I thought I needed a bed so that if I died or if something happened, I could spawn back to that space, because I didn't know how to locate myself within this like very large world back to. So I didn't want to like start building stuff and then like be lost and not be able to find it again. So I was like, oh, I need to create a spawn point, you know, because in Minecraft you set spawn points, so if you die, you'll come back to like your bed or your home location. So I was like, well, if I'm going to make a bed, I might as well make a house around it. And because I was very new at the game, I was like just also practicing and making this this living space. But yeah, this is also kind of you know, I think I've talked about this before, where, you know, when I would play games like The Sims as a kid, or like any game that had any sort of like interactive aspect that was more creative, I wasn't very imaginative even as a kid. I'd just be like, I'm gonna make my house, or I'm gonna make a space that I know. Like that was more fun to me than, you know, making something wild and different from my lived reality, which is also part of why I was like so set on like remaking these buildings exactly as they are, which became kind of boring in a way. I mean, it's interesting to me, but you know, but yeah. So, but with this space, with the sphere and everything, I think again, it sort of brings it back to the more sort of fantasy element of the game, and symbolizes this separation and this sort of distance, both physically and virtually, from the lived world. But I still wanted to have something that was, you know, distinctly me, which is, when I'm looking at it now, a bit sad because it's just a chair in front of a desk in front of a computer. But you know, that's also, you know, I spent a lot of time in front of a computer, as a lot of us do. So I think it would resonate also with a lot of people. And if you want to exit the sphere, by the way, those of you who don't have the ability to fly, if you jump down, I think you'll be fine. I think fall damage has been turned off, but you can jump off the edge behind the, well, anywhere really off the edge of the platform. And there's a hole at the bottom that you can exit the sphere from.
Here's another one of your considerations. I just fell into a gentle pool of water.
Yeah, no,
Oh,
I tried to make it as gentle a fall as possible. I thought the leaves would also sort of break your fall, but apparently they don't. But everyone should be fine with the current settings in the world.
Your garden here at the bottom by the pool has attracted a number of Minecraft bees. It's quite lovely.
I know, I noticed. I was like, I'm not sure why the garden next to the health center hasn't, but this one apparently is attracting bees, which is kind of nice, because I haven't actually seen any bees at all, I think, through the whole process, but they've been hanging out here, which is kind of pleasant. And it's funny because I was trying to build a butterfly garden, because that's also something my sister's been working on in Odanak. And I was like, oh, I want to make a butterfly garden. I want to make a pollination garden. But now they've just shown up. So that's kind of neat. But I also wanted to have a visual reminder of the garden here. So I just included the plants here. And that's kind of the connection between the quote unquote real space of Odanak and, you know, my own little home space. Yeah, I guess that's about it for the tour itself. I mean, if you want to walk again and like go up ladders and explore, please feel free to do so. And I don't know, I'm here to answer questions or chat in the Minecraft chat or whatever, you know, but thank you. Just replying to the chat.
Yeah, the audience through the live stream can't see the chat.
Oh, okay.
Oh yes, so I'll read it. I'll read this question or this comment out loud for the live stream audience.
Oh, there it is. It's been added.
Oh, thank you. Never mind, audience. You too at home can.
I think it might have come in and out, but there's a delay also on the as far as I can tell from the stream, anyways.
Yes, there's
at least the YouTube stream, yeah.
Oh, I found my way to the, I don't know what they would be, but the indigenous inhabitants here, their village.
Right. Yes. Oh, yeah. I should probably touch on that too. So the way Odanak is, anyway, there's I can't really get into the history of it because I don't know it very well, but essentially Odanak shares space with the town of Pierreville. So basically, if you're in Odanak, you're also in Pierreville. Like they're very much so connected. You know, I'm trying to remember which way it goes, but I think if you drive through, you'll be in Pierreville, and then you'll be in Odanak, and then you'll be in Pierreville again. So they're you know, they sort of split each other in half, or Odanak does at least. So when I started building, well, actually, when I started looking for a spot to build at first, it felt very strange, like this sort of weird, weird colonial sort of like mindset where I was like, oh, where's the best area? You know, where's the place with the most resources, or where's the place with the nicest view to like call home or call Odanak in this case. And I think I just sort of settled on a random area in the end because the space is too big, but it ended up making sense to be in the middle of like between two little villages, which I've both identified with. There's a little sign at the entrance of each part of it as Pierreville. So yeah, that's kind of the in-game representation of that. But I haven't actually had any real interactions with the locals, so it's been interesting to, you know, hear their animals occasionally, or like, you know, fly above or go in and like see people milling about and doing their everyday thing, but never really having any real interactions with them because I've been so focused on building my own thing. But you know, in the meantime, life has gone on, and I'm not sure how the villages work in Minecraft, but I'm assuming things have been possibly built. I think their road got a bit longer at some point. I might have like cut it off because I didn't want it to get into the town and mess with what I was doing. But yeah, we've kind of cohabited without really interacting in any significant way. I've had a merchant come along a few times, but that's about it. I think everyone got booted off again. I'm just
Maybe there's a storm where the servers are.
yeah, maybe. Maybe it's a busy time. Is the server is in Germany? Is that right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, John and Kat tracked it down, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, so Royal Slick, you got the voice chat link. If you want to come on.
Right. Sarah's saying yes, the servers are in Germany. You would think they'd be reliable with
We have
how
a
important
lane.
the internet is in Germany.
We have a lane in the chat saying that the plants are lovely, Simon.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, if I could have gone on and on, I would have re-textured every plant and try to make, you know, I think my initial plan was to make it as close as possible in terms of like plant life and even fauna as Odanak, but you know, maybe that's for a different project.
Are you going to drop the flower texture pack after the show's done?
I could, yeah. I mean, it's nothing special, but I could make it available. I might actually try and make the other plants that are currently in the medicinal garden. There's tobacco, there's raspberry, there's a couple others. Evelyne could probably say what they are, but I could make those two and make them available.
Very cool. Yeah, they look amazing.
Yeah, I realized that. I think initially I thought I had to make them the same resolution and the same sort of, 16 by 16 pixels or whatever that the plants or blocks in Minecraft are. But then I realized that I could just make them any resolution.
Cool.
So they are bigger. They are bigger files, but not by much. I think.
Yeah, my computer's not great, and it's running really smooth right now.
Yeah.
Speaking of computers, this little computer set up in the middle of this foliage orb is amazing.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I think it just got damaged earlier. So I don't know if it's all there. There should be a screen on it, but I don't know if it's...
The screen's a little sign for me right now. It's a floating
Oh, yeah,
sign.
no, it's gone. So there should be an item frame here with glass in it, but it got... I don't know why I can't put it back on. I'm trying to put it back on, but... No, that's not where I want that. Yeah, sometimes it doesn't work.
Oh, Evelyne, are these all the different plants that are in the garden currently?
Right. Yeah, so raspberry, yarrow, nettle, goldenrod, burdock, mallow, comfrey, plantain, nettle, and dandelion. So yeah.
About half those plants are also found native here in this territory.
Right.
The yarrow, nettle, goldenrod, and well, I don't know if raspberry's found native here. We've got our very
I don't know. I'm not sure if all of them are native. So the plants that are in the guide and in the garden aren't necessarily all native to Odanak, but they're they are essentially they are now. But yeah, it's been funny too, even like going on my daily walks with my dog in Toronto, and like in some ways I've also been paying closer attention to plant life here, and I'm like, oh, here's some plantain, oh, here's some, and I was just picking raspberries with my son at the park the other day, and to like have those reminders from the game in the real world. It's funny, like life imitating art.
Sorry, I joined fairly late. I'm not sure if you've gone over a lot of things, but I've just come across this sign called Pierreville, and I'm pretty curious about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's the... so Odanak is basically right smack in the middle of Pierreville, or Pierreville is around Odanak, depending on which way you look at it. But the town is like very much so a part of or adjacent to this town of Pierreville. So Odanak being the reservation, and Pierreville being the non-indigenous town. So I've identified it as Pierreville because that's essentially how the community exists in the real world. So if you go to either of the village parts in the world right now, I think they're both identified as Pierreville. But I think the village parts have also, at least one of them has grown quite a bit since I started. So yeah, it's kind of gotten out of control. I wonder how it would evolve. It might just start taking over MySpace eventually. But
Cool.
Which is also true to the reality of the community. Like they set up there, sometime in the 17th century because they got pushed up by the English from what's now the northeastern part of the United States, and so a lot of Abenaki are still there, but like it's still, to this day, it's still a relatively small community in Quebec. But yeah, so it's one of like two communities that are actually quite nearby. So there's Odanak and Wallanack. But yeah, so Pierreville is the, I think for a while too, like Odanak would be referred to as Pierreville because it was the more common name that people were used to.
Also, I have to ask, since I'm familiar with plantains being similar to bananas, is that what these plants would eventually grow into? Full trees that sprout plantains?
No, I think it's a different plantain, as far as I understand. It might be like somewhere. Again, my sister might be able to better speak to this if she's still on the chat, but I don't believe so. Like, this is something that you can. I don't know where you're located, but it's something that's like that grows wild pretty much everywhere. And I've never seen it much taller than like a foot or so.
Plantain is not the banana.
Right.
Like Simon explained, it's really a very, very strong and powerful antiseptic, usually used for insect bites, used to reduce inflammation, and very good for infection also, when applicated directly on a wound or insect bite or even a burn.
Oh, amazing. I'll have to look it up more later. I didn't realize that was something. I'm in Toronto right now. That's where I am.
Oh yeah, so you see them. I'm in Toronto too, and they're around. Like if you look around, you'll see them. Like they just grow wild pretty much everywhere. You'll see them in parks and on the sidewalk even.
Yeah, everywhere there's grass. I mean, you can find plantain. It's very, very. It's everywhere.
Common.
Yeah.
Nice. I recognize a lot of these other ones. Like mullein, I've seen tons of in the city growing, like on the railroad tracks especially. I see a lot of mullein. Or mullein? How do you pronounce it?
I think it's
mullein. Mullein makes more sense. Mullein. Yeah.
Mullein is the bright yellow, very tall plant that Simon put in the medicinal plant garden also.
Yeah, he's looking at them right now.
I lost you guys. I don't know where you are. So.
Oh, we're just at the garden right now.
The leaves are like pretty fuzzy.
They're very big and very, very soft.
Yeah, really soft thing.
You can actually use that as a cataplasm for different skin infections. Very good for skin infections. And also for ear infections when you squish the flower and the leaf also. Very good for ear infections also.
Nice.
Yeah, that's super fascinating, Evelyne. Could you speak about the medicinal uses of some of the other plants that are here?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, for one thing, yarrow for me is one of the really great ones because it's anti-inflammatory. It's very, very good because it's found also almost everywhere. So you can really use it. Well, let's say you fall down, you sprain your ankle, you just take yarrow and you can applicate it directly on where you've sprained yourself, and the inflammation will reduce almost instantly. So you obviously have to mash a little, but it really, really helps a lot. Then
those are also I've seen quite a lot of these in Toronto too, so they grow pretty much everywhere.
Yeah, I mean, almost every plant that is in the medicinal plant garden that we have in the booklet are really, really you can find them everywhere. Like Simon said, in the city, you don't necessarily have to be in countryside or anything. It's just very, it's all around. So another one is the nettle. Nettle is we're always looking for superfoods and foods that give a lot of vitamin and everything, and I think that nettle would be the one that I'd recommend, even though it has a bad reputation because people, it stings. So it's called stinging nettle. So when you touch it, the blisters and the little needles will really roughen up your skin and will sting. So usually people wouldn't want to use it, but I've been using it especially in smoothies since last year. And it's such a great food. It's got vitamin A, B, C, D, E, K, calcium. It's great for the immune system, boosts up your immune system. It's really, really a great plant.
It can be as an infusion, right? I knew its use as to make into a tea, basically. My understanding was Yeah, my understanding was that you had to cook it, but you don't have to, right? You can still eat it raw.
Well, you can eat it raw, but the thing is, so you just have to like blend it or something. So,
Right,
but
right.
then the stinging will go away like really easily.
Right.
But yeah, so it's just like you pick it with gloves and cut it and just keep. And I just like put it in the blender with everything I use as smoothie. But you can also use it like a topping, like you'd use as spinach on pizza. And
Right.
but it's really, really great. And I mean, it doesn't cost like $5 a pound or whatever.
Yeah.
The
And it's quite bitter too, right? Like kind of like arugula maybe, or
yeah, you're right. But I mean, when you use it like in food, I mean, just try it in small quantities at first. Yeah.
Cool. I've dyed with it before as well.
Oh yeah.
Done some dyeing with nettle before.
Cool.
Mm-hmm.
So another plant that to me is like one of my favorites as a woman is the raspberries. The raspberry leaves I use them a lot at my moons for my stomach aches, my inflammation. And I've been using it for years and very, very beneficial, especially mixed. Sometimes I made an ointment with raspberry and a yarrow. So it's really, really great to use these plants to help your everyday life. And that's what I've been doing for the past 2 years. And I mean, I'm really discovering a lot of the beneficial sides and medicinal sides of these plants. And I mean, it's really great. I mean, it's very interesting.
Cool.
Maybe another one I can talk about. So plantain yarrow, goldenrod is used a lot is an anti-inflammatory also. Used to help for urinary problems, fast bladder or having problem going to the bathroom. So really helps a lot for that too. And by the way, the raspberry and the blackberries can be used as a natural to go to the bathroom.
Laxative.
Thank you. Laxative. Thank you.
No
So
problem.
yeah, it can be used for that also.
The fruit, you mean the fruit itself?
Yeah, the fruit. Yeah.
Yeah.
Have you made any sort of skins for those plants as well, or is this all the 6 currently what you guys have?
Yeah.
done?
So the 6 I currently have are the ones that were in the guide. So I based my my garden that I have right now off the guide. But yeah, as Evelyne was saying, these other plants are now present in the garden. And I mentioned this earlier, that she was showing me the garden the other day and like saying, here's some tobacco and some raspberry and everything. I was like, I haven't made those textures yet. I can't include the garden. So yeah, maybe eventually I'll make them, and as was mentioned earlier, perhaps make them part of the texture pack. But yeah, they're not here right now.
Cool. Pardon my interruption. They're lovely.
No worries.
I love looking at these textures.
Cool.
When that happens, we'll make them available on the Ender website so that folks can
Right.
come back and load them.
Very cool.
And thanks so much, Evelyne, for bringing your knowledge and expertise sort of related to you and Simon working together. Nikki in the chat says, I find it very interesting that this work is kind of a collaboration with your family versus focused solely on your experiences, being you, Simon. So can you talk a bit about that approach of working on a project collaboratively with family?
Yeah, I mean, if I'm being perfectly honest, it was kind of it felt like a selfish or like a very solitary experience a lot of the time, because as I said, it started off as this idea of like building a garden, and I really wanted to make it like my sister made it and so on. and I wanted to consult very closely with her, but then it turned into something else. But definitely was like so important to be in connection with her and, you know, with my dad too, because they're the ones who are actually on the ground there. And I didn't want to just like, you know, pull this space out of my ass or out of Google Maps and just be like, here's Odanak, this is what I think. So yes, it was important to consult with them and have their perspective, at least on certain aspects of it, and certainly on the garden aspect of it, because again, I'm not an expert on that. But yeah, as I'm like also have become a father recently, and am about to be a father for the second time in the next couple of weeks. I've been thinking a lot about sort of my own connection to Odanak and connection to Abenaki culture and history, and, you know, how there's been a huge disconnect most of my life with it. And, you know, my early years up until like maybe the age of 18, I didn't have much knowledge about, you know, anything Abenaki or anything indigenous, really. I didn't grow up with a lot of indigenous culture in my life. It was just sort of a fact that I was like, you know, quote unquote, a card carrying Indian. And although we would go to like powwows and visit the community once in a while, we didn't have a really strong connection growing up with it. So I spent so much time, you know, especially in my younger adult years, kind of like researching that and trying to figure out where I fit within that narrative, if at all. And because my sister and my dad have had the opportunity to work in the community more closely and have a closer connection, and what I felt was a more significant understanding and yeah, connection with the history, because they were able to be physically present in the space, I thought it made a lot of sense to refer to them and refer to, you know, their understanding and knowledge, because mine is always kind of, for better or for worse, or maybe for worse, has often been like book-based and research-based. So so yeah, I didn't want to also act as this sort of again expert that I am not about these things.
I like how your the computer station within the foliage cube sort of acknowledges that I don't know, solipsistic nature of whenever you're working on a computer, but especially in a video game, how it can be feel sort of like you're working on something alone.
Yeah, it's yeah, it's a weird it is a weird solitary space, and kind of as I said, like it has felt at times as like, you know, even with the last project that I did that was looking at sort of the history of Indigenous representation in video games, you know, whenever I'm dealing with Indigenous history, or, you know, at large, or like in this case, this was the first time that I've dealt specifically with Abenaki history, or like, you know, literally like the place where my father's side of the family comes from. Like, yeah, it felt very scary in a way, because I've always been kind of autobiographical with my work, but it took me a long time to get to the point where I felt comfortable, or I felt the need to even discuss the Indigenous side of my personal history. So, so yeah, I mean, there is still, this separation is still very much so felt, and especially now, it's always kind of like not a balancing act, but, you know, with everything that's been happening with the whole pretendians list and all that stuff, like I'm always a little bit on my, I always feel a little bit guarded, or I always feel like there's some opportunity for someone to, you know, I don't know why, like come at me in some way and be like, you can't talk about this, or you can't say this because you don't have this connection to the community, or that kind of thing, which is not the case at all. Like, I don't think anyone in Odanak would be like pointing fingers at me and saying that I can't do this or that, because I haven't had like a lived experience of this space as much as they have. But it's definitely odd in some ways, like living in this time of like having this tension exist constantly, and kind of knowing that some people might think of my connection with the community differently. I guess I haven't really spoken to that, but that was definitely in the back of my mind when throughout this too.
I'm just going to paste. There was a wonderful comment in French in the Facebook chat, and I'm just going to copy it into our
Oh,
chat
sure.
there instead of butchering it with my.
So the comment basically says, what I think is great is this that the dynamic of the game leaves this sort of like greater place to the imagination of Odanak and to the interpretation of the numerous evolutions of the reserve, quote unquote, as it pertains to its connection with Pierreville and to the other buildings, but also the plants. So I'm not sure. Who do you have the name of the person who left that comment?
Oh, sorry. Yes, it was Guy Durand.
Ah, Guy Suy. Salut, Guy. I hope you can hear me. Yeah, Guy, who is a curator, an artist, and all-around amazing promoter of Indigenous artists, and also teaches at the college at CUNA, which we visited earlier. But yeah, it's. I'm just gonna reread the comment real quick. Yeah, I think I don't know. I think Guy might not also have been familiar with Minecraft, so it's also interesting to sort of enter or have people enter this space from different perspectives. You know, a lot of people, I'm sure, like myself, 2 months ago, like aren't familiar with Minecraft or even video games in general. So I'll be interested to see if you know, if more people from Odanak or Abenaki or just get to visit the space or see this video, then I'd be interested to hear how they perceive it and how they see my intervention, whether it's relevant, what it's doing, you know, because I have obviously my own opinions about it. But
So is this the first time you've played Minecraft was to create this body of work?
yeah, pretty much. I mean,
That's amazing.
I think when I saw the call for Ender Gallery, I was immediately interested because I was thinking about I was thinking about hunting and gathering in video games for a while, and I was trying to figure out a project to make that would, you know, fit those guidelines. And you know, I'd done with the Indigenous representation in video games project, I played a lot of games where the protagonist or one of the player characters is Indigenous. And so I was trying to like make a collection basically of games where gardening is involved or where gathering is involved or where hunting is involved. And I couldn't figure out a way to really make that work or make that fun or interesting other than just having a collection of these games and then being like, you know, this game has gardening in it and this game also has gardening in it. But I was thinking a lot about like kind of in a way the uselessness of all these things that are very practical in various video games where like you can build this knowledge around how to make this and this potion, like even in a game like, I don't know, like The Witcher or something like this, where you can collect this knowledge and go on these databases online and so on, but still you're just sort of tied to the game itself and to like the only use that you can have for that is in the game. And when I saw the call, I was like, oh, this is actually an opportunity not only to have real life inserted into the game, but to, you know, this isn't necessarily the case here because I don't have a whole compendium of, or I don't have the book available that the garden is based on, but that, you know, some real life knowledge can be extrapolated from it. But yeah, so anyway, this again, this kind of grew from the garden, but yes, no, I didn't have any like real experience of Minecraft until I think the call came out sometime in the winter, and I was like, I'll get Minecraft and see if like I can make something from this, and then it just ended up fitting with a lot of the stuff that I was already thinking about.
Very cool. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah. Thanks for asking. It's always good to have these conversations too with people, because I sometimes forget why I'm doing things. It's great to have these questions.
Elaine Stett responded to your earlier comment saying, yes, but making Indigenous people think they don't exist or aren't worthy is part of colonialism. And I think that's tragic, I was going to use the word funny, but no, tragic aspect of the Pretendian condition, because of residential schools and genocide and this intentional disconnection of trying to remove people from their culture and understandings, that it's beaten into folks to that fracture and separation has happened, and it's intentional to feel that maybe you shouldn't be connecting, and so that's that weird perverse empathy that some of us, especially the urban indigenous folks, feel that's deep-seated I guess sadness from that disconnection is triggered or activated when you see and you empathize with these people that are not you and in this same position, but it's that colonial, that insecurity through colonial intervention, and so the people who should be feeling that lack of a right to connect have no problem doing so. The people who we need to come back and to try to do the work to regain this knowledge and build those connections, then who have more sensitivity to the issues than feel a push to that the assimilationist project has worked so well enough so far, then shouldn't we just continue that project for them and finish that work.
And just to be clear, I may have not have mentioned this off the top, but I'm of mixed descent, so very much so raised in a very Franco-Quebecois household, so I'm not just Abenaki, so that's also part of it, but yes, definitely, whenever someone is outed or as being in this Pretendian position, it's always very upsetting, and it's always very even those people who are ostensibly acting and working for Indigenous communities, it's still very upsetting to see sort of also this strange posturing that comes with it, or the whole dress up aspect of it, when people are when the communities and the history indicates that they might not have the ties that they say they have, family-wise or otherwise. It's always very upsetting to me, also as someone who passes as white, because I'm very mixed, as a lot like most Abenaki people are, because we're it's a community in the East. They're very close to urban centers. Abenaki people have been mixed with people from other backgrounds since 400 years, if not more. So as someone who has to sort of say that they're Indigenous, it's also a tricky position to be in, because there's always this sort of not necessity, but need from my part anyways to reassert that or to reaffirm myself, and then a lot of that has happened thankfully through art making. I don't just have to tell everyone that I meet that this is what I am, but also to become more comfortable with that position, and that that's who I am, and to be proud of that, and just like you said, John, just do the work and try and participate in a way that feels useful in some way, even if it is making this little world in Minecraft. which allows space for these conversations, which I think might be the more important thing.
Well, we're at 2:30. Do we want to switch the stages of the opening, since we've gone half an hour over from the public to the private?
Yes. Yes, folks are more than welcome to continue hanging out in the exhibition server, or join us if you haven't come online yet and you're still interested, but perhaps we're a little intimidated by the public eye of the stream. I think it's an excellent time to transition to the more intimate settings. So before we begin closing, I'm just going to check to make sure there's no more questions in the chat. I believe we have covered everyone's answers. But yes, thank you all so much. Bravo, Simon. Thank you for sharing your work with us today. The exhibit will continue to be open until the last day of August. We do have a few guest accounts if you are interested in exploring the exhibit on server. This video of the opening will remain up, and we'll also have a better quality stitched together version without all the drops, the server drops, if you want to revisit this this information in the future. Yes, please, if you're interested in visiting in server, please contact me at cbluemke@mackenzie.art. And we can get you give you a private tour. But of course, thank you so much, Simon, and for working with us over these past 2 months. It's been really, it's just been really wonderful to learn and to see like this body of work develop, and also share the space with your family, Evelyne, and your father. And then today with all the audience that we've had, both on server and on stream.
Yeah, thanks everyone for coming. It's been really, really great to talk about this, and to think back on how this has evolved so much. And I hope to continue having conversations with people outside this space.
I just want to say bravo, Simon, me too, and that I'm really moved. We're really moved, Mom and I, about the work you've been working on. I mean, you were saying earlier that it's hard sometimes to find a place in as a native, not living in the reserve and everything, and having not that connection. And I actually felt the same way at first when I was working in Odanak. I was really looking for my roots, and I was looking for my place in Odanak. And it took a certain amount of time before I could really connect myself to my native roots. And I mean, I think that, like you said, by your art, making this connection with art is a really good way to do it. And congrats. I'm really proud of you, man.
Thank you. Proud of you too. This is all because of you, by the way. This all happened because of you.
Well, thanks.
That's a wonderful place to end the stream there. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a great day.
Bye, all.
Bye.